Why is it so difficult to explain our work clearly? Like, why does it take up so much time and so much of our energy to explain what we did to other people? And I want to address this today because it is something that I see happening a lot, especially among STEM professionals, engineers, data scientists, who constantly need to explain what they did to other people, whether they are people in the team or some people who are like on some managing positions, team leads, and so on. So why does this happen? Why is it so time consuming? When I started thinking about that and how can I help my clients to really overcome this situation and this issue, I realized that the core problem is because we don't know what we are trying to say. Like, we know that it's difficult, but when you go deeper and think about which part is actually difficult, the difficult part is realizing what is it that we're actually trying to explain. And usually when people realize, okay, this is taking way too much time, what they tend to do is to just say everything, like show every single detail, every single plot, every single result, all of the details from the algorithm, the experiment, and so on, because it's the way of least resistance, right? If you just show everything, then the responsibility is on the other person, the one who is listening to you, to figure out the things and to see what makes sense to them. That way you don't have to think and to filter beforehand. So this is something that is a very common solution, and I can just give many examples of that. Or if you think about your recent meetings, or actually whenever you're listening to people usually don't explain themselves well, and that's because they just don't want to think. They just say, okay, I will let you think, and I will just give you all of the bunch of information so you can figure it out. And that's something we don't do on purpose. That's something that we just do in order for the other person to hopefully take what they need from our explanation. However, this does the exact opposite effect. Because when people are given too much information, they feel overwhelmed and then they shut down. Basically, they stop listening to us because they're not interested. Like, they don't want to figure it out. They don't want to do the thinking. And you can just think of yourself on a conference. Like, what do you want? You want all the information to be spoon-fed to you, basically. You don't want this information to be thrown at you, so you have to figure it out. And that's exactly what happens to people when we do exactly that. They just stop listening, start scrolling, and so on. We have been in many of these meetings when you're just listening to someone, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, let's check my email because I cannot follow this person anymore. So what is actually the solution? So now we saw that this is not the solution, like throwing a bunch of data on them, at them, isn't the solution. So what can we do? What we need to do is to think beforehand, like even before we try to give them the information. We just need to think and find the structure in our work. Really think about what is the thing that they are interested in. What is the thing that they need to know in order to understand me? And really fine-tune this structure so it makes sense to them. Now, this works because that's actually the only way people are not going to get super lost when you're explaining something. And however, in order to do that, it's a skill, right? It's a skill. Explaining your work, it's a skill. Structuring and finding structure, even better. Finding structure in your work, it's a skill. And then making sure that the structure we found makes sense to people who are listening to us, it's another skill. So all of those things are something that we need to develop in order to make sure that we are explaining our work clearly and correctly to people, whether they know stuff about our work or whether they are complete like outsiders. They are not in the specific field we are working in. But I was just about to say, so it's a skill that requires practice as any skill, but once you do it, it becomes so easy to find a structure. It becomes super easy to explain your work clearly, and the best part is that it's not time consuming at all. Because once you learn this protocol and once you learn how to apply it in your specific work, it's something that not only doesn't waste your time, but it gives you time. It creates time for you, basically, because you don't spend endless hours procrastinating. We all know that. Like, you need to prepare a presentation and then you're preparing it at 3 a.m. the day before the deadline. So you don't want that. You don't want that. And the thing is that the only way I found it works, so the only way we can actually make sure that this structure, we find the structure that matches the interest of our audience, is exactly by working on those specific skills in a way that it's not only theory. Like, I don't want to share just the tips with you. It's more about the practical work. Like, okay, now we know the theory and let's go and apply it. So if this is something that you feel you might need some help with, I will leave a link down below in which you can schedule a completely free discovery call with me, because this is exactly the kind of stuff that we do in my coaching program. We take your work and we learn, so basically you learn how to apply all of those techniques on your work, so very hands-on. And we know that theory doesn't work. The practice thing is the key, because of course we all know the theory, we all know how things are supposed to be, and yet here we are, yet the vast majority of talks are horrible. We don't understand a thing. Communication in general, it's not a strength in the STEM field because of our training, but we can go into that at some other point. However, if you feel that you are not there, like every time that you have to explain your work, you feel that it's draining your mental energy, you're procrastinating on it, it's likely because of this lack of structure. It's likely because you are not sure what needs to be said, so you are avoiding and ruminating into this kind of thoughts. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.